So, dear followers of Harabit, this is Tesfabran Zaulatai. I'm presenting you today in English based on an interview conducted in 1998 at islam.org, published in a magazine Nidal Islam in on February March edition 1998. I'm bringing this article or this interview, which was conducted to Dr. Hassan Salman, who is then the deputy emir of Eritrean Islamic Jihad movement, as it gives us a clear understanding of the Islamic Jihad movement, what the objective their objective is, what the mission they have, and how they want to achieve their goals against the Eritrean regime for the establishment of an Islamic state, which is an extension of the global caliphate project. Therefore, I will simply read the whole article, which is English. I will not intervene, I will not put any of my opinion. The only thing is, I will read as it is, and I hope you will find it useful. This interview is available on internet. If you want to access it from the primary source, please Google by typing Deputy Amir of the Eritrean Islamic Jihad movement, Abul Bara Hassan Salman. The doctorate title that I mentioned is recent. I don't think in 1998 he has this type of title. Just to give you a background of Hassan Salman, he's one of the youngsters who started to engage in Islamic politics as early as 1970s. And then in 1981, he was one of the founders of Eritrean Islamic pioneers movement in Khartoum. Then after, he was also the member of the Eritrean Islamic Jihad movement that launched its armed struggle in 1988 against the so-called Christian Liberation Movement, the EPLF, or the so-called Sha'biya. And their sole objective is to block the advancement of EPLF against occupying Eritrea by removing the Derg regime, and then, as they call it, to establish a Christian or a Christian government or a Christian dominated government. I don't agree with their statement, but that was what it is. Anyway, the Eritrean independence achieved in 1991, as we all know, 24 May. And then these jihadists continued to conduct armed struggle against the then transitional Eritrean government with the support of the Islamic government of Sudan, led by Omar al-Bashir, under the political guidance of al-Turabi, and heavily funded by Al-Qaeda, who was then stationed in Khartoum. Bin Laden helped the Eritrean jihadists to train in Sudan with a human capacity up to 1,000. That is a resource that I found it on internet. And the jihad war against the Eritrean government was terminated in 1997 when al-Bashir signed a treaty with the South Sudanese Liberation Movement, and the Sha'biya also put pressure against al-Bashir to remove or to expel the jihadists from Sudan. In 1998, they got a haven in Ethiopia where they started to reorganize themselves. It is at this time that Hassan Salman conducted this interview with Islam.org. Let's proceed then. The deputy Amir of the Eritrean Islamic Jihad movement, Abdul Barra Hassan Salman. The governing regime is a terrorist regime which acts with enmity against Eritrean people. Just make a note of clarification. The governing regime, as it's mentioned here, is the PFJ of Eritrea. Question: can you please illustrate the approach and the general plan of the movement to rid Eritrea from the Christian regime? Hassan Salman. The Eritrean Islamic Jihad movement seeks change and reform in accordance with the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Messenger, SAW. This can be summarized into two basic aspects, da'wah and the jihad. This comes through taking Islam to the general population in accordance with the words of Allah. Say, this is my way. I invite unto Allah with sure knowledge. I and whosoever follows me, and subhanallah, and I am not one of the polytheists. Surah 1208. This requires greater concentration on correct Islamic education and to apply all means permitted by Islam to achieve this goal, taken to each group according to their understanding, bearing in mind the obstacles placed in the way which make it difficult to carry this knowledge to a lot of the people. The Islamic Jihad movement is striving against the two groups, the Christian regime and the hypocrites, in accordance with the words of the Most High. O Prophet, strive against the disbelievers and the hypocrites and be strong over them. In the shade of this preface, which is based on Islamic principles, the axis of change with the jihad movement revolve in the following: number one, armed struggle and training use; two, da'wah and education, which works to destroy the fallacies of the regime and educates the Eritrean people to bring together their creed and the religious requirement; three, in the political and the media, through manifesting the various political policies and the creation of the necessary organizational mold so that we can avoid the enemy's plots. In this, we accompany Quran and Sunnah, and to fulfill as a group all the aims therein, and to realize our position as servants of Allah, and to establish the Islamic State. 4. Despite our shortage of resources on the economic front, we consider it to be one of the main pillars for the movement for Islamic change, since spending the money was given preference and the priority over the lives in most overseas of the Quran and since the lack of funds could set back main activities. 5. The external front is also which is also of the fundamental areas for any change which looks to change reform, which looks to change and reform. This is a very sensitive front from the aspect of our strategic security, and it requires well planned external activities to expose the regime. In this respect, we lays and exchange our experience and expertise with our Muslim organizations, which also work to challenge the various corrupt regimes in the region, concentrate our activities among Muslims through means which will enable them to see the conspiracies of the enemies and their plots to uproot Islam and the Muslims, to strive to generate suitable opportunities to support our jihad through Islamic means, move around the neighboring countries and expose the corruption of the Eritrean regime and its danger over the entire region on the religious, security, and the political fronts. Generally speaking, the process of change is an encompassing one which aims at the creeds, the concepts, the knowledge, the principles, the values, and the morals. Allah Most High said, truly, Allah does not change the condition of a people until they change what is inside them. Surah 13:11. Question: what is the extent of the tie between the Eritrean people and the Eritrean Islamic Jihad movement? Hassan Salman. The public support for any change or reform movement is related to the extent of the commonality of their goals culturally, religiously, socially, and politically. What is also required is the presence of effort to increase the public awareness of what is happening around them. The leadership has set realistic goals and has proved its ability to lead the people. The leadership also carries the concerns of the Eritrean people and their religious aspirations, as it also represents the alternative political organization which is able to confront the Christian regime governing it. The Jihad movement also works to renew its framework and the mechanism whenever its circle of support expands. The movement also represents the only military option which had proved its fortitude in confronting the Christian regime in Eritrea. This catalysis made the Eritrean people gather around the Jihad movement and its Islamic program and led them to offer all that they have both inside and outside the country. Question: can you elaborate on the suppressive activities of the Christian regime in Eritrea, which had been perpetrated against the Muslim people of Eritrea? Hassan Salman. The governing regime is a terrorist regime which acts with enmity towards the Eritrean people since their independence. During the revolution, the regime pointed its guns to the hearts of the unarmed Muslim citizens in order to forcibly conscript Eritreans into the army. Hundreds of Muslim civilians were killed by the regime in this process of conscription. When the regime got into government, they increased their terror activities against the Muslim citizens, especially the intellectual terror. They did this through the shutting down of the educational and the religious institutions, which worked even during the imperialist time. The Isaias of work regime came and tightened its reins and closed some of these institutions and is working to dry up the source of their funds so that it can create a barrier between the Muslim people and their creed. There is also broad political terror against the entire Eritrean population, stopping them from expressing their views, opinions, or thoughts with respect to the widespread corruption or with respect to their right to participate in the administration of their country. In fact, the Eritrean people are treated as little children who have not reached the age of consent. As for the detentions and assassinations which take place in the dark, these have been so prevalent that the prisoners of Eritrea were filled overflowing, and the regime had begun building new prisons in the various Eritrean cities as the regime is living in a hysterical state. The regime regards every Muslim who practices his religion and adheres to its obligations and cares for his honor as a danger. So, they filled their prisons with pious Muslims, teachers and students, politicians, leaders, and the common people in order to arrest their fear. These base people do not even take the prisoners to court or for a trial, as there is no true justice in Eritrea. Further, no one dares to ask where these prisoners are or what had happened to for any person who requires about them will end up in prison too. Eritrea today can be regarded as a country being governed by a very strong terrorist regime which owns the means of which owns the means to enforce its oppression. The human shifting has stretched to reach even those people who were at one stage comrades of Worky during the period of liberation. These people are being found assassinated every day. The coroner, coroners finding with respect to these many deaths are usually that they were drunk and killed themselves. Question: how does Isaias Afwerki waste the wealth of the nation? And what are the reasons behind the economic breakdown despite the wealth of natural resources in Eritrea? Answer: Eritrea is rich in various economic resources if these were to be utilized well. However, economic growth is dependent on political growth. As a matter is such, economic growth is not possible in a country ravaged by internal and external wars. Under the current regime, it is not possible to benefit from the wealth of resources which are present in Eritrea. If the government was to exploit these resources, the income generated will all be directed towards the wars which are devastating the population and exhausting resources. The priority for the regime will be to build their security and defense personnel, which will naturally lead to further economic slide inflation. One of the amazing things about the regime is that when it won power, the ruling party, the National Liberation Front, increased its control over more wealth so that it became wealthier than the government itself. In fact, we hear at times that the front is making loans to them. In addition to this, the party has taken control of most of the commercial and the economic ventures, leading to us a slide in the economy, the bankruptcy of a large number of merchants. They have also made it difficult for a large section of society to trade freely through placing heavy controls over importers and exporters. This led to a further slide in living standards. The reader can realize how serious the situation is. If he was to know what the country relies on foreign aid for 56% of its food requirements. Furthermore, the regime has had a very heated exchange with aid bodies as it does. This aid is to reach the people directly. Rather, they want the assistance to be directed to the troops and to take it into the market so that they can benefit sales of the question. What are some of the military success achieved by the blessed struggle in Eritrea? Hassan Salman. The movement has achieved through the last few years some great military success, which has portrayed through the steadfastness of Mujahideen in the face of the political storm which hit the region. The vast spread of the units of the Mujahideen in the various sectors in Eritrea and the success of a number of large jihad operations which aimed for the heads of the regime, its military strengths and its roles and its strategic organizations. The details of these operations and the battles seen as a start of jihad were illustrated through 121 military bulletins issued by the movement. We can give the following brief list of achievements. 1. The establishment of bases for spring-in these missions inside Eritrea, which will enable the continuance and the success of military operations. 2. The downgrading of the most of the roads which are military specific, which had forced the regime to move through many areas simple transport. 3. The reduction of the morale of the troops due to the many victories of the Mujahideen. 4. The destruction of many joint ventures with the Jews, which would have won the regime much money. 4. 5. The increase of public support for jihad because of the many military attacks and the increase in the number of Jews joining the shutting down of many barracks and belongs to the regime on the Eritrean reef because the regime has feared targeting of this by the media. 7. The success of the military operations carried out by the Mujahideen inside many of the Eritrean cities, including the capital, Asmara. Question. The African Horn is facing a various Christian onslaught. Can you clarify the role being played by the Isaias Afwerki regime in this respect? Politically, the African Horn refers to all the countries of East Africa. It includes Somalia, Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Kenya. However, the term takes a narrow and wider applications at times, depending on the dominant politics of a particular country. The area is of a particular strategic importance as it links east with the west through the Red Sea. That is between the agrarian and industrial societies. The region is also an oil producer and has great mineral deposits in the sea. The Horn's strategic security significance increased since the establishment of a Jewish nation in Palestine. This catalysis, along with some other, made the region a highly sought after place, particularly by the colonialists and imperialists, both in the past and the present. As for the latest Christian onslaught, which is being led by America, its scenario is being executed by the puppet regimes in the region. This onslaught is also an attempt to impose the sovereignty of the Christian minorities in the region in order to ascertain the strategic security and the economic needs. As a result of this, the, follow, the and following the fall of the Mengistu regime in Ethiopia and the Siad Barre regime in Somalia. Notwithstanding this, that these regimes follow the Eastern Bloc, American arranged scene in the following manner. 1. Giving the rule to two Christian rebel groups in both Eritrea and Ethiopia. 2. A splintering of Somalia and inciting tribal war between therein in order to create an opportunity for both Eritrea and Ethiopia to make advantage of the both battles of to fulfill their own designs in the absence of the Islamic balance in the African Horn, which Somalia represented in one respect. 3. The declaration of the economic and the diplomatic siege, along with media misinformation about Sudan, so that the balance can break up completely in all the extremities in the region. Feeling what had transpired, the Isaias work regime is regarded as one of the elements of the Christian strategy in the African Horn. This is evident in its employment of Eritrea and its people to destabilize the security of the region. The behavior of the regime is enmity to neighboring countries such as Sudan and Yemen, and it is complete denial of the role of the Arab countries and the Muslims in the war for liberation from Ethiopia, and its alliance with the Jews are among the biggest indicators of question. What are the links of the Christian regime with the Jews government, and what are the effects of this relationship on the affairs of Israel? Israel moves with a clear strategy in the Red Sea, which seeks to extend its military presence in order to secure its own interests and achieve its civil and military plans. Israel is also working to break its political and diplomatic isolation and to protect its foreign trade in East Asia and Africa, and to destroy the current Islamic strategy, which aims at making the Red Sea an Islamic sea. Whilst the Red Sea has Muslim people to its east and its west, Israel has allied with Ethiopia since the 50s so that it can take advantage of the long Eritrean coast, which stretched over 1,080 kilometers, in order to fulfill its strategy. For this reason, prolonging the war of independence of Eritrea was a strategy for Ethiopia, as was its opposition to the of Eritrea even after the fall of the Manifesto regime. However, through the meeting between the Ethiopian and the Isaias regime, they took some assurances not to resist the favoritism in the military and security ranks, which they achieved during the Ethiopian era. From this point, Jewish government moved from being an enemy of the Eritrean people to a strategic ally for the Isaias regime, and they offered for them all the favoritism in it. As for the traces of these relations over the various events, it is clear that Israel is fulfilling its plans in Eritrea through an official umbrella, which is Eritrea itself. Through Eritrea, Israel is also able to infiltrate the depths of Africa, the sources of the Nile. It was also able to increase its bases in the Red Sea. The Yemen Eritrea war was only one of these traces. The Eritrean regime has sent many Christians to Israel in order to stabilize in various fields, especially security and how suppress Islamic revival and create oppression and terror against the Muslim Eritreans, the Muslim citizens of Eritrea. Question: the future. How do you look at it? What does it offer, in your opinion, particularly bearing in mind regional and international interests in the region? Despite the intermixed nature of the regional and international interests in the region and their negative repercussion, the future that, with the permission of Allah, will be for the Muslim. External influence will not continue for long, inshallah. As for the catalysts for this, these are: one, the effective effort on the part of the Islamic Jihad and Da'wah tides the African Horn; two, the education of the Muslim population and their awareness of the extent of viruses floating of the Eritrea as the Christian was regionally and internationally. The possibility of establishing a Somalian government capable of maintaining a political balance. Four, the alerting of some of Arabic countries as to the danger of the Jewish presence in the region. This will help to review their opposition, who is expected to provide support to the people of the region. 5. The efforts of the Palestinian Jihad will also, inshallah, play a role in upsetting security of the Jewish government and to confine its external influence. As far as when we talk about the future of our region, we do not look at it in isolation from the Islamic environment and the surrounding. We are a part of a community. We feel pain for its pain and joy for its joy. What is a question? What is required to help the Eritrean people in their jihad against the Christian regime? The religious Hassan Salman, the religious obligation and the religious loyalty imposes on every Muslim to support his brothers in every place. However, corruption will spread in the earth. Allah Most High said, and those who disbelieve, they are patrons of one another. If we do not, there will be tribulation in the earth and great corruption. Surah 8, 73. The Messenger of Allah, SAW, also said, strive against the Mamluks, Mushriks, or associators with your money, your slaves, and your tongues. Through this prophetic edict, the areas of possible support became clear. It is money, and what falls under it, it is tongue, what results from it, and the people themselves. In this respect, the Islamic Jihad movement is in dire need to the range of financial, media, and political support, each according his ability, especially with the encroachment of the policies of the New World Order, which is attempting to halt the Islamic revival and the strike as the Muslims everywhere, hand to hand with their policy drying up their resources. The opportunities of different kinds of support are available, whether these are educational, da'wah, aid, or jihad. Every Muslim must offer according to his ability in this immense task. A final word, Hassan Salman. I say to all the preserving mujahideen in this world, perse- persevering mujahideen in this world, you must remain firm in this path regardless of sacrifice and regardless of the length of the journey, because there is no way around there. This is necessary so that there is no fitna and the religion will be for Allah. Every jihad groups must contemplate at length and review its plans, the strategic, and to continue in the constant correction, and that we do not help our enemies against ourselves, and that we do not repeat the mistake and the failed attempts. I say to the Muslim people everywhere, supporting jihad and the mujahideen is a way to remove the nightmare of the degradation and the humanitarian which has rested on the chests of our community in its various forms. It was narrated of the Prophet, if you trade in interest and take tales of cows and leave behind jihad in the path of Allah, He will send upon you money, which will not remove until you return religion. Finally, we thank Need Al Islam magazine for giving us the opportunity to bring news of our situation and our jihad all the more. And we ask Allah to effort. I thank you for listening interview. Thank you.